This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little bit more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. Happy New Year! It's January 1st, obviously, and traditionally it's been a huge day for college football throughout the years with all of the bowl games. Well, today we've got a couple of strange things, an amazing finish, and a rare occurrence in the NFL. Let's start by going back to the 1954 Cotton Bowl, a game that's known for one specific tackle made that day. This was an 8-win Rice team against a 6-win Alabama squad. Alabama had an early lead set up by Bart Starr's interception of an owl pass, and then he went to work as the Tide's quarterback and led Bama down the field for a touchdown, capped by Tommy Lewis's 2-yard run. Now, remember that name. The kick failed, and it was 6-0 Bama. The Owls responded by giving it to their running back, Dickie Maegle. On the first play of the second quarter, Maegle ripped off a 79-yard touchdown run. The PAT was good, and it was 7-6 Owls. Later in the second quarter, the Owls got the ball back on their own 5-yard line. Once again, Maegle took the handoff, found room around the right end, and he was streaking down the sideline for the end zone. Well, after he passed midfield, Tommy Lewis, the guy who'd scored Bama's touchdown, jumped off the bench, helmetless, raced onto the field, and he chopped Maegle down at the knees. He then hopped back up and he ran back to the bench, sat down, and then tried to hide. But there was no hiding what he'd done. The referees conferred for several minutes before awarding Maegle a 95-yard touchdown. Maegle scored another touchdown later in the game, and he totaled 265 yards rushing on 11 carries. That is still a single-game Rice record for rushing yards. Now, Lewis felt remorseful almost immediately after the rogue tackle, saying, "I didn't realize I'd done it when I returned to the bench. It seemed like a dream. I kept telling myself I didn't do it, but I knew I had." Lewis went to the Rice locker room at halftime to apologize to Maegle, and the two actually made an appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show a few days later to talk about the play that came to be known as the 12th man tackle. Lewis told Mr. Sullivan that he was just too full of Alabama, and here's Maegle talking about the incident 40 years later.
Kind of accepted as part of my football life and life in general, but because it was such an unusual happenings in sports, I guess, and especially in football, to have somebody come off the bench and tackle you on the way for a touchdown.
How about another oddity that happened on this day in 1985 at the Orange Bowl? Now, first off, this was a huge game with national championship implications. If you remember the story I did back on December 21st about BYU and the '84 Holiday Bowl, well, for almost everybody except those in Provo, this was the national championship game. Sure, BYU was the only undefeated team that season, but they hadn't really played anybody. The Sooners were number 2 in the AP poll, and Washington was number 4. They were a pair of one-loss teams. The game was tied at 14 in the fourth quarter. Oklahoma broke the tie with a 22-yard field goal. Or at least they thought they had. First, the Sooners were flagged for a player not reporting into the game with a temporary jersey number. That negated the kick. Would have been a 5-yard penalty. But the guys driving the Boomer Sooner Schooner did not get the word that it was not a field goal until it was a bit too late. The horse-drawn wagon raced onto the field but got bogged down on the soggy turf in front of the Washington bench. They had no problems on the hard AstroTurf back in Norman, but here on the wet, sodden turf at the Orange Bowl, well, the schooner got bogged down. And another flag was thrown. So it was a 5-yard illegal procedure penalty for the guy checking in with the wrong number, and then a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty on Oklahoma for the Boomer Sooner Schooner getting stuck. If the procedure penalty had not been called, the yardage would have been tacked on to the kickoff, and the Sooners would have kept the points. Instead, it was now a retry, but from 42 yards, not 22. That's when this happened.
So now Lasher has to unload from 42. Next time we hear that gun go off, we better check those horses. Blocked by Washington. Oh, no.
Now, it's hard to say if that was the deciding factor or a turning point, but anytime something like that costs you points, it tends to drive a head coach crazy. Lasher kicked a field goal later in the fourth to finally give the Sooners a 3-point lead, but the Huskies scored 2 touchdowns to win the Orange Bowl 28-17. And as we mentioned on the 21st, there was the belief that if Oklahoma had won this game, that pollsters would have voted them the national champ. Many Pac-10 folks thought Washington should have been vaulted from 4th to 1st, but instead, they wound up 2nd. Okay, Sooner fans, this is not gonna get any better for you as we move ahead to 2007 and the Fiesta Bowl and one of the all-time great finishes to a college football game. This is undefeated and 9th-ranked Boise State against number 7 Oklahoma. Boise led by as much as 18 in this one. However, with 1 minute 30 seconds to play, the Broncos were clinging to an 8-point lead with Oklahoma knocking on the door. Here's Tom Brenneman with the call that night for Fox.
To the end zone, tipped, caught Mancini. Wow. Touchdown Oklahoma.
Oklahoma went for 2 and got it, and the game was tied at 28. Next Broncos possession, a little miscommunication between quarterback and receiver turned this game on its head.
Clock is running. They've set the ball, and Zabransky a dangerous throw, and it's intercepted into the end zone. Marcus Walker. Unbelievable.
A Sooner pick six, and the PAT gave Oklahoma the 7-point lead with just 1:02 left. The Broncos moved the ball down the field, but with 7 seconds to go in this game, they were facing a 4th and 18. They didn't just need a first down, they needed a touchdown.
For the Broncos.
Zabransky's legs might be critical here to save time on throwing the ball.
Down the middle, James, the lateral! To the corner of the end zone! Can you believe that?
The PAT tied it up at 35, and this game headed to overtime. The Sooners got the ball first, and Adrian Peterson scored on the first play. Oklahoma was back up 7. On their overtime possession, the Broncos faced another 4th down, this one a bit shorter at 4th and 2. And again, they were needing a touchdown. So they went Wildcat.
They do this a lot. Peretta to take the snap. He's going to throw it to the end zone. Touchdown!
And here's the critical moment. Instead of taking the easy 1, Boise State's Chris Peterson decided to go for 2. Once again, here's Tom Brenneman with the call.
Boise State for the win. They hand it off to Johnson. Boise State has won the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl. Can you believe it?
So it's not exactly clear from the audio, but this was a variation on the old Statue of Liberty play. Though instead of holding the ball up, Zabransky faked a pass to the right and with his left hand down by his hip, let Ian Johnson take it and score the winning points. Boise State 43, Oklahoma 42. This game is also known for the post-game proposal of Johnson, the guy who scored the winning points, and Boise State's head cheerleader, Chrissy Popadix. She said yes, of course. They were married in April of that year and are still together, Though the proposal anniversary is a little bittersweet after Boise's loss to Penn State last night in this year's edition of the Fiesta Bowl. Are you a hockey fan? Then you'll love Eric Zweig's new book, Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. It's a treasure trove of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave even the most devoted puckhead astounded. The intense rivalries, epic showdowns, and historic clashes that shaped the NHL's early years, it's all in there. Zweig uncovers the true stories that helped shape the sport, ensuring that you will never look at hockey the same way again. Check out Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. So there was a lot of publicity and talk that came out a few weeks ago when LA Chargers kicker Cameron Dicker kicked a 57-yard field goal on a fair catch free kick. It was the first time a successful one of those had been kicked since 1976. Now that's a 48-year separation. Pretty rare, right? Well, let's go back to this day in 2002 when Doug Flutie did something that had not been done in the NFL for more than 60 years. Flutie was in his final year with the New England Patriots, and this was the final regular season game against the Miami Dolphins. The Patriots had already wrapped up the division, so the outcome didn't truly matter. The Dolphins led 25-13 when Matt Castle connected with Tim Dwight for a 9-yard touchdown. Well, instead of sending Adam Vinatieri out for the regular PAT, Bill Belichick sent Flutie out. Now, initially, it looked like the Pats might be going for two with Flutie in at quarterback. Instead, this happened. Here's Kevin Harlan with the call that day.
Doug Flutie, strange formation. Drop kick for the extra point. It is up and in. Can you believe that?
That was the first drop kick in an NFL game since the 1941 NFL Championship game when Chicago Bear Ray Scooter McLean drop-kicked an extra point in the 37-9 win for the Bears. Flutie's drop kick on this day was the final play of his 20-year pro career that included 12 years in the NFL and 8 in the Canadian Football League. And on this day in 2012, Detroit's Matthew Stafford and Green Bay's Matt Flynn combined to throw for the most passing yards in a game with 1,000. This was a back-and-forth game. The largest lead was 9, and there were 11 lead changes in this one. With a 14-1 record, the Packers had already secured the division and a first-round bye in the playoffs, so Aaron Rodgers sat this one out. Matt Flynn got the start, and he made the most of things, and we'll get to the insane stats in just a moment, but with 1:13 remaining, the Lions were up 41-38, but the Packers had a second and goal from the 4. Flynn hit Jermichael Finley for the short 6, and the extra point gave the Packers the 45-41 lead, and that's how the game would end. So now the irrationally insane in the membrane numbers. Flynn completed 31 of 44 passes for 480 yards and 6 touchdowns. 3 of those to Jordy Nelson, who caught 9 balls for 162 yards. Matt Stafford completed 36 passes for 520 yards and 5 touchdowns. Calvin Johnson, a.k.a. Megatron, had 11 catches for 244 yards and a touchdown. The 1,000 combined passing yards between Flynn and Stafford is the most by competing quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, and it's the highest scoring game in this long divisional rivalry. And time now for today's That Ain't Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. Michelangelo was not the first to paint the Sistine Chapel, but he was the last. Hey, this is Steve White, the host of This Day in Sports History. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the episode or you're a fan of the podcast, can I ask you to do me a favor? I made the shortlist for the best sports talk podcast in 2024. There are some well-known folks in this category, such as the Kelsey brothers, Scott Van Pelt, Bill Roden, and I can use all the help that I can get. I put a link in the show notes that will take you to the page, and if you have a moment, click that link and cast your vote for my podcast. I would certainly appreciate it. Thanks to all of those who have voted, and again, thanks for listening. Have a great day, I'll talk to you tomorrow. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.